In the last lesson, we built a message box that asked if we would like to run Notepad. In this lesson, we will be adding to that code so that when the user clicks yes, it will actually run Notepad. But before we are able to do that, we need to find out whether or not our user has clicked the yes button or the no button. To do that, we need to head back to the help file and find out a little more about our function. To do that, go ahead and select the message box function like we have been, and then press F1 to load the help file on the message box function. When the help file opens, scroll down to the section titled Return Value. From looking at the column under the Return Value section, we can see that a unique value gets returned for each button type in a message box. The OK button returns a value of 1, the Cancel button returns a value of 2, the Abort button returns a value of 3, and so on. Up until now, we have not been capturing the return value of the message box function. There are several ways to capture a return value of a function, but for this section of the script, we are going to use the if-then statement to determine what value is returned by the message box, or what button was actually clicked within the message box. Before we do that though, let's look one more time at the help file to see what return value we should get if the user clicks on the yes button. According to the help file here, if we click on the yes button, we should get a return value of 6. Now that we know that, let's head back to our script and put that knowledge to use. On line 13, before the message box function, type if, and then a space. Next, we want to go to the end of the line, where we will add a space, and then an equal sign, another space, the number 6, a space, and then finish the line up by adding the word then. What we have done is told the script if the message box function returns a value of 6, or the yes button is pressed, then do something. However, we have not told the script to do anything yet, so let's add another message box function to test to see if what we just made works. Let's do that by adding a simple message box that will say you clicked yes when the user actually clicks on the yes button. Look at the code I just added closely and make sure that yours is the same. I added a message box function with a flag parameter of 0, so it would display an OK button. I left the title parameter blank by adding 2 double quotation marks, and I added you clicked yes to the text parameter. To finish the if-then statement, we need to add end if to the end of our script. Our second message box will now display when a user clicks yes. However, if the yes button is not pressed, our second message box will be ignored and nothing will happen. That is because the if-then statement will only run the section of code between the then and the end if. if it meets the criteria that you have set for it. In this case, if the user has pressed yes, or the return value of the message box is 6. Let's go ahead and run our script to see our new code in action. Run it once and click yes, and then run it a second time and click no. As you can see, the if-then statement is working the way we want it to. It is only displaying the second message box when we click yes to run Notepad. Now, let's update our code again so that instead of displaying a message box, our script will actually start Notepad. To do that, we need to first delete our second message box function. Next, we need to add a function called run. Start by typing run on the same line that the old message box function used to be on. Then, we need to add our run function parameters. In this case, we only need to add one. After run, type an opening parentheses, a double quotation mark, notepad.exe, another double quotation mark, and then a closing parentheses. The run function will start just about any external program on a computer for you. This is very useful when automating various Windows programs. In this case, we are telling the run function to start Notepad. Go ahead and test our new code by pressing F5. Then, click yes to make sure that Notepad gets opened by our script. Once again, it looks like our code is running smoothly. If you get any errors when you run your code, make sure your script looks exactly the same as what you see here. One last thing before we move on to the next tutorial. When writing code, it is very important to keep your code neat and add regular comments to your code. That way, if you ever have to go back and look at a piece of code that you wrote, you can easily tell what that particular piece of code is supposed to do. Luckily for us, our editor comes with a built-in feature that will help you tidy your code. You can use this feature by selecting Tools from the menu, and then select Tidy AutoIt Source. Alternatively, you can press Ctrl T. The second method is my preferred way of running this feature because it is something I use regularly and is just faster than selecting it from the menu. Go ahead and tidy your source code now by pressing Ctrl T or selecting the option from the menu. As you can see, it automatically tidied our code for us in a way that makes it easier for us to read. Now, let's add an extra line above our 3 lines of code and add a comment about what that code is doing. To add a comment to a line, start by typing a semicolon. A semicolon tells AutoIt to ignore anything on the line after the semicolon. Then you can add a comment that says opens Notepad when a user clicks yes in the message box. As you can see, the editor automatically turns all comments green to help you easily see that it is a comment and that it will be ignored when your code is ran. This highlighting is called syntax highlighting and is a very useful feature when programming. That's because different colors represent different things that your code is or isn't doing, and is often used when trying to debug something that you have written in your code. We now have a nice piece of code that is neat and is easy for us to understand what it is doing. Run the code one more time just to make sure that our comments are actually being ignored when we run the script. Now that we have confirmed that the script is working as it should, we can continue on to the next section. As usual, if you are a MrAutoIt.com member, go ahead and take the corresponding test to this lesson to make sure that you understand the concepts covered within this lesson. Then, when you are ready, move on to the next tutorial. If you are not a MrAutoIt.com member and you choose not to take advantage of our free resources, you can just move on to the next tutorial now. I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.